In this episode of The Tripod...
Then if you just ring a bell and the dog will start salivating. So
no way.
Salivating, it's just the noise of a bell ringing. So you then take that.
I have accidentally done that to my daughter. You know at the start.
Jesus Christ.
You know the start of an episode where we have the 2 camera clicks.
Yeah.
Whenever she hears that, she goes, "Welcome to the tripod."
I thought you had a bell ready for breakfast time or something.
There's that as well. We won't get into that here now.
I thought you were tricking the poor girl.
Welcome to The Tripod.
Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of The Tripod. I was about to say what episode number it is there, but I can't remember what number it is, lads. Is it 23?
23.
Perfect. Episode 23. How are you all doing? I am joined today, but as per usual, by my lovely co-hosts, Mr. Ronan, High Definition, and Mr. Kevin. Mr. Kevin Hennessy. But we are also joined by a special guest, probably one of Ireland's up-and-coming talented landscape photographers, but also an expert in human psychology, Mr. Mark McGuire. How are we doing, Mark?
Very good. Thank you for having me on.
No matter. You
is the crack, Mark?
You sound a bit hesitant there, Mark.
No, I'm just gauging it, just sussing you out. I'm still shocked from the behind the scenes stuff. That's all. You know?
Oh yeah. You got the full true for tripod experience there for the last 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Oh, brilliant. Well, look, Mark, thank you very much for joining us. For the listeners who don't know who you are, can you please inform them?
In 3 words or less.
3 words.
No, I'm only joking.
A Kildare fella.
Nice. Well played.
That's it. I'm out.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks for joining us today.
No, what do you want to know? Career-wise, personal-wise? Do you want a bit of both?
Man, both, but also throw in your photography background as well if you can.
Right, so to give you an idea of, I'll give you career-wise first to understand why I'm here and what I'm talking about. So I am a trauma therapist. I'm a psychotherapist who works with adult survivors of abuse. So I typically understand human behaviour from the point of view of understanding why we do things and what happens and why we get triggered. So it's very relevant to social media, which I suppose is what we're going to try and really touch on here, I think.
Yeah.
From a photography perspective, I was the weirdo with a camera in primary school. I wanted Polaroid cameras and was clicking out the Polaroids back in the day. And I always had an interest. Yeah, so I always had an interest. Like, funny, I have Polaroid pictures of us on our school tours from when we were 10. I can't even remember the school tour.
No way.
Yeah, I do, yeah. So it's mad. And like sometimes we give my lads that would be laughing look at the pictures we have. And then I think when I got into my teen years, I just still liked it. I don't know, it was like an art to it or something. I liked the art side of it. And bought myself a little digital camera, little point and shoot. And always had an interest in kind of snapping, I don't know, second butterflies or flowers or trees or whatever it was. Trying to figure out what I could do. And then in my early adulthood, I linked up with a guy who's in America now and started doing weddings. So I was a second shooter on weddings for a short time and then kind of took the lead. Yeah, so I could teach Ronan a few. I'm not joking.
Yes,
please do. It's bad enough you were brought on to build a profile on me here today, and now you're going to take my weddings off me.
I was going to throw in a dig there, so I was, but he got it early.
Yeah, I was joking. So I think I did my first wedding like 13 years ago. I think 12, 13 years ago.
You must have been only about like 11 when you done that, were you?
Thanks. Yeah, I'll go with that. 10 actually. I was. So then, I don't know, because I was of the age, and I remember listening to actually one of your podcasts where Ronan was talking about weddings, and I kind of have a similar style, I think, to your own, in the sense of having the crack with the couples. I ended up being of the age of people who were getting married and getting all the weddings of everybody that I knew was getting married. So came busy doing that. Did that for a long time until I started to hate photography. So weddings really turned me off photography, I have to say, at the end, but I kind of got sick of doing the same thing over and over again. And now I am back. Yeah, I couldn't handle them at the end. It was like, I didn't always draw. I remember one week I did 4 weddings in a week, and one of them was in New York and Manhattan, and 3 of them were here, and that was just me done. It was like, oh my God, that's just too much.
Yeah.
too much editing, too much.
I'd served my time.
Yeah. I kind of going, no, that's I don't know what it was, and I'm starting to feel that way. Where you're kind of not enjoying it. You're going out and you're miserable nearly, but you can't have that attitude going out to a wedding. Like I'm being the happy-go-lucky person to kind of not enjoying it. And then I kind of put my cameras away and I didn't do much, and I took them back out maybe a year or so ago as more of a self-care tool, which is really relevant to what we're going to talk about. And kind of mind myself to get me out more and to kind of get me out and expressing that artist side of it. And I tried to drop the money element to it and just go back to the fun hobby bit. And I love photography again from doing that. Really,
Deadly.
That's brilliant.
There's a very long answer.
No,
that's beautiful.
That's exactly. That's what you touched on. The reason why we brought you onto this podcast, because this week, as the listeners know, we have spoken heavily about social media and followers, and in my mini pod I probably spoke fairly honestly about my experience of it and how you can get caught up in this whirlwind of followers and likes, and that becoming ultimately your sole motivation to go out and shoot, and that can have quite detrimental effects, not only for your mental health but for your photography and even your social life. So I suppose, Mark, firstly, can you tell us the type of work that you do and how you can kind of give us a few insights into social media, possibly how your work helps you to give you insights into that? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it can. So, look, I hate doing this, and I hate doing this because it buys into the whole thing that social media does in terms of status and putting yourself ahead of people. So, for the sake of giving credibility to what I'm saying, I'll give you an idea of where maybe I've came from in terms of training and things. So, I hold qualifications in counselling, psychotherapy, trauma counselling, child youth and family studies, and social studies. And I teach social studies. So the study of social psychology and sociology and why we interact and how we interact with each other. I teach that with IT Carlow, and I teach counselling with another college in Dublin. So I have an understanding from my work, and I've worked in social care and I've worked obviously in counselling, as I was saying. I've worked a lot with trauma counselling, and from doing mainly the social care work and the trauma counselling, I've got a real understanding of why we do what we do, I suppose. A lot of people don't realise that we're just these living beings that go around and can be stimulated by lots of things around us and triggered by lots of things around us that we don't know is happening. So, and man, and it's funny, we're talking before men here, man is the biggest person who's most ignorant to that and thinks they're in total control of their mind and doesn't accept that there's lots of things happening that they don't realise is happening in the background.
On the lads.
To do things. Yeah,
testosterone.
It is the reality of it. So, so that kind of, it's funny because I use social media, maybe I'm kind of going ahead of you a bit here, but I use social media with a very, like a very observational stance. And maybe it's because I probably can't switch off from the work I do. I kind of observe behaviours on social media.
I'd say you must judge me like there's no tomorrow. Firstly, I'm not judging anyone. You must study me like there's no tomorrow. Jesus, don't say I'm judging people. That'll make everybody switch off. So I probably, I have a lot of ideas of what we can talk about, but what I'm going to talk about will probably, hopefully will make people feel a little bit maybe nervous or a little bit that they have to kind of judge themselves or look at themselves or assess themselves, because a lot of people struggle with that. I think the more you're feeling that, the more you've got something to look at, is the best way I can say it, So when I'm saying things, I suppose when I'm answering here, I'm talking about things, I'm going to try and talk very vaguely because I don't want people to think I'm specifically picking on them or talking about them from what you just see online as well. It's very hard to touch on these things without somebody going, that could be me. Is he talking about me? And then feeling I'm doing something like that, because that's one of the curses of my profession. When I go to a gathering, people think I'm analysing them, things like that. If I give my response from my kind of training head, it's kind of like, stop fucking counselling me, Don't do that. Don't do that psychobabble bullshit on me or whatever.
Yeah. You're that guy at dinner parties no one wants to talk to.
Absolutely.
I'd be right up there after the Guinness and the hug would be glued to your hip for the rest.
I've lost what you're asking me now. What were you asking me?
See, this is what happens in the tripod. You were talking about studying behaviours on social media, kind of how you can see people getting stimulated by certain different things.
So that feeds onto what we're talking about. So obviously with the background of what I do, mainly the trauma counselling, I suppose. One of the ways we heal people from childhood abuse, and I'm not going to get into something too deep or too upsetting people here, but one of the ways we heal people from, or help people to heal from past traumas or any traumatic events, is getting them to understand the impact that's having on their body and their nervous system and their brain and their brain chemistry and things like that. So it's very relevant to social media. Social media triggers all of the chemistry and hormones in our brain, and it triggers all the social kind of interaction elements of it. So we are vessels, as I was saying, for stimuli, and to be stimulated and triggered. And when we go onto social media, we are all, whether we like to admit it or not, so we can say, I like being by myself, I like doing this, that, whatever it is, but we are all programmed to be in social groups. We're all programmed to interact different ways socially. And social media played that out on speed, is the best way I can say it. So social media basically stimulates us in the way we get from face-to-face interactions, just on multiplied by whatever, So if we go onto social media and you take into like building on what you might have been talking about with followers and things like that, we'll get and I've heard you talking about this in reference that we get dopamine hits if we get followers and we get likes. We get a stimulus. The like is a biological evolutionary process where we get stimulated and we get this lovely feeling of having had a positive interaction with somebody. So somebody likes what we do, and we can't stop it, we can't control it. It's a chemical that happens in the brain. The neurotransmitters fire in the brain and send a signal to tell us to feel either reward or pleasure, or to feel nice and happy and warm and cuddly and things like that. So there's two different chemicals kick off. Am I boring here? Is this making sense?
This is so interesting.
I am absolutely bed into this. Honestly, this is amazing.
So
genuinely, keep going.
So two main chemicals get fired off in us in our brains if we are engaging in social media. So we often talk about dopamine, but the biggest one that kind of gets triggered first is oxytocin. Have you ever come across that?
Only in the labour ward. So
yeah. Well, there's a fabulous example where it was first discovered. So if you've been in the labour ward, like I have, you'll notice your wife is going through the most horrendous, or your partner or whatever is going through the most horrendous pain in the world, and suddenly the baby arrives and it's like the pain never happened. There's just this amazing connection that you watch that is beyond words. You can't explain how they were in so much pain and now they're so happy.
Yep.
Would that be fair to say?
Absolutely.
And that's a release of the massive surge of oxytocin called the love hormone. It creates this lovely, cuddly, warm feeling. And we get that when we get positive interaction on social media at some level. So if somebody's following us, or we're getting mass following, or people are liking what we're doing, it kind of releases the same hormone out to us and creates this lovely feel-good factor for us. So that's lovely. That's really nice. And that's one of the positive sides of social media. But it's also one of the catches and all of the curses of it. Because if I go on and I'm insecure, if I'm starting from an insecure place, and I go on social media, I'm looking for nearly like an artificial or plastic type of oxytocin hit. So I'm looking for this kind of false hit. And I might go absolutely adamantly searching for it, so I could, again, it's very hard to say this without people maybe interpreting it as a reference to them if it fits to them.
I'm used to it, Mark. Sorry.
Yeah, but you will see it. Oh, look, there's Kat.
Welcome to the tripod.
Peter is basically a fully fledged member at this stage.
Oh, is he?
And do you know what? Like, I'm here every day during work hours, and he doesn't bother. As soon as he sees that microphone and the lights flashing, it's time to shine. Sorry, Mark. Apologies.
No, you're all right. Well, you'll see it playing out. So you probably have, and we all have, and anybody who's listening to this, I presume, uses Instagram. You'll see it, or will have observed it, maybe not in the language I'm putting on. You'll have seen people reaching out to you and looking for you to reciprocate a like or a comment or whatever it is. You'll see them looking to reciprocate a follow or whatever it is. So
yes,
they're likely coming from an unhealthy point of view if they're searching for that. I don't say they always are, but they probably are, because they're chasing the follow, they're chasing the like, they're chasing a comment back, which is, look, it's not that everybody does that, or anybody listening can have to go, oh my God, I'm unhealthy, there's something wrong with me. It's just, if you do that, and you do that at a kind of an obsessive level, or you notice, you observe yourself doing it at quite a high frequency, you might not be overly satisfied in yourself and your relationships. You might not be getting that hit out of genuine good value friendships. And what that happens then is you can fall into the trap of chasing it on social media. And there was a research study done 2017 by, I'm going to say it was the Royal Society of Public Health or something like that. I'll find it for you if you're interested in it. And Instagram was found as the most unhealthy social media platform.
Really?
Out of all the social media. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, 100% for mental health. It was found to be the most unhealthy platform there is for mental health. So when I was doing my masters, I did my research dissertation on social media. So I kind of have a lot there in the background. It's for many reasons, but mostly from the visual stimulus point of view, and it's kind of largely been based on most of the research has been largely based on adolescents and their body image issues that we would have heard. And in terms of and don't worry, I'll link this to photography, but it makes sense if I explain it. So say the stereotypical idea we hear that female is very obsessed with putting out an image and having a certain body image and looking a certain way. So they'll filter the image to fit a certain way of looking, and next thing they end up feeling insecure about their real self. So there's great, when I say great studies in terms of what we have, but very sad studies of women having higher levels of suicidal thoughts, self-harming tendencies, real low mood and depression from using Instagram. Same thing plays out at a level in the photography world, because one of the biggest pitfalls of Instagram is people experience the type of envy or jealousy when they see other people's photos or they see other people's lives, things like that.
Yeah.
So if I'm going out to wherever it is, to Kilsamoher, and I'm trying to take a picture, and I go, oh my God, best picture ever. And then I go home and see Sean Orr across the Milky Way.
I like you. You're a nice guy.
So two things happen within me. The part of me that goes on to social media to share the lovely art photography looks at Sean's photo and goes, gee, that's a lovely photo. God, that's really good. And then another part of me goes, oh, I wasn't able to do that, I couldn't do that, That's something gone wrong there. And we can end up coming away with it triggers, the best way for me to say it is, while it's triggering these lovely positive emotions of seeing that lovely piece of work from, say, Sean and one of yourselves, it also triggers cortisol and stress hormones in me. It lights up a different side of me that is creating a pain within me, is the best way to say it for you. So very safe for me to keep saying me instead of other people, so I'm going to keep referring it back to me so other people aren't personalised.
Yeah, absolutely fine.
Thanks, Mark. Appreciate that.
So what happens then if I'm online and next thing, because again, go back to the idea that we're social creatures. So if we go on to Instagram, we typically will end up, if we engage at the levels like we do in terms of the photography community, we end up as part of a community on it. So we end up, and any community has battles for social status, and it has higher people who have more of a influence within the community, and it has people who are maybe technically, in terms of that kind of stereotypical way of communities, a lower status or not as much influence. And the people who maybe don't have as much influence, if they are already coming from an insecure place or have what's going on, will get badly rattled by seeing other people doing much better than them and getting more likes and more comments and things like that. They'll end up being activated or stimulated in a different way than maybe somebody who's got a higher sense of self-esteem or is in a better place starting off using social media. So they end up in this trap of maybe more desperately chasing likes and follows, or reaching out or sending us messages and things, which we can probably all relate to, saying, could you please share my stuff, or what do you think of my stuff, or things like that. Probably everybody here can relate to that, can't they?
Oh, 100%.
Yeah,
like, I mean, I'd get messages like that, or, like if someone shares one of my shots to their story, like, oh, do the same for me or something, like whatever, like kind of return the favor, which isn't, it was,
So funny you bring that up. So that's if you look at social psychology, we use tactics without realizing we're using them if we're struggling to get the attention that we want. So we use what's called the reciprocating tendency. So we all have a tendency to reciprocate. So if I go on to sorry, Sean, I'm keeping on using you. If I go on to Sean, safer than making other people feel uncomfortable.
Thanks, Mark. Appreciate
it'll take an awful lot to make me feel uncomfortable, Mark. So we're
it's not matter. This is okay.
So,
carry on.
So if I go on to Sean's page today and I have, my motive is to get likes and comments, and I go on to Sean's page and I see Sean posts photo and I say, savage photo, Sean, really good. Sean, without realising it, is triggered with thousands of years of evolutionary process to respond and reciprocate that nice comment back to me. So without realising, when I post a picture the next day, something subconsciously is happening in Sean thinking, geez, I must comment on that, you know? So
way.
Go ahead.
He will have a high tendency to respond to me. Now, for fear of sounding like a second weirdo that watches you all the time, I've actually done this and watched it happening on social media. So I've actually done it for the crack to I've done it for the crack to see. Like, I'll comment on somebody's photo and then give it 5 minutes and I get see a notification. Blah 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 has commented back saying,
go away. That's wild.
100%. You'll see it play out. There's absolutely no doubt about it. And look, I mean, it's not that this is a bad thing or a negative thing. People just have different ways of gaining the social interaction. It's not a negative. So don't want people to think it's a negative. It's not that it's a bad thing. It's only a bad thing if it's playing out in a way that's negatively affecting your life. We all get attention and social interaction through some means. We all have a tendency to do it. We do it like Kevin, you buy people Guinness and give them hugs, you know.
Yeah, I do. And Mark, can I ask, like, it doesn't matter because the question's gone out of my head. I was holding it for a while there. We need to get a notepad or something.
This is what I need to put up with. Like, Kevin is just honestly the weak link here. Like,
shut your mouth.
Luckily, I have a question. I can save this. Mark, you were talking there, and like, there was loads of questions flying through my head. But one thing there you mentioned just at the very end. So I got a couple of messages today in relation to the mini pod and in relation to people kind of asking about what I spoke about and stuff. And they kept saying, like, I'm not bashing like social media. I'm not bashing like followers or likes or comments. So it's brilliant that there's a community there and we can get that social interaction. What I was getting at is that I got sucked into this spiral of just constantly chasing those followers and those likes, etc., and those comments, you know, and that kind of almost took over the photography side of things, like, you know. So, like, would you say that if people are kind of doing that, it's actually issues even outside of social media? Like, you know, are they bringing in insecurities from, like, let's say their personal life or their friendships or their social circles? Is it hard to say?
It's not hard to say. I can answer it, but I don't want you to feel like I'm analysing you.
No, you're okay. I won't be offended.
Yeah. So I suppose obviously everybody's individual. So I can give you a general idea, but you need to speak to everybody individually to get there exactly what's happening for them. But the general idea or feeling I get on that, if you end up chasing likes and follows, you could have just fell into the pitfalls or the negative sides of what it stirs up within you. Social media can stir up within you in the very same way. I don't know, if you got celebrity status out in the more real world, in the sense of, I don't know, if you became a rich or famous musician, you might lose the run of yourself too, because it just goes to your head in terms of, you know, wanting more and wanting more, you know.
Yeah,
you can relate to this. You can relate to this.
I was in a famous band back in the day. Well, we actually, I say famous, we were Bramus because everyone in Bray knew who we were, but that was about it. Anyway, sorry, I digress.
And you know what the thing is, like, and that could be one of the reasons. It could be, as you said, Sean, it could be that there's factors outside where there's some, I don't know, maybe you're not satisfied with the quality of your relationships, or you're just not feeling good, and you go on and get a hit like you would off drugs, you know, because like social media and drugs are the only two kind of demographics that call people users, you know, people who partake in them. Like, you're a social media user or you're a drug user, you know. You're not a user in any other category of anything you do other than those two things. So there's I see a very real link to that use of that word in terms of you're a user when you go onto social media, or social media user, you know?
Yeah, because I mean, when someone takes, if someone takes a drug, apparently they get a dopamine hit, and similar chemicals are released in their brain than what's released when you get a like or follow on social media. So that's how it becomes addicting. Like, so someone will keep coming back for that and keep coming back.
So if you take cocaine, I am absolutely not promoting the use of cocaine. So
we do not endorse cocaine at this podcast.
So if you take cocaine amplifies the kind of neurotransmitter and all the dopamine in your neurotransmitters and makes you get a high from the dopamine. So you get this amplified amount of dopamine firing through. So you get, when somebody snorts that first line, they get a whoa, they get a massive rush of dopamine that happens that kicks into them. When we get a like or a follow or a positive interaction on social media, we get a smaller version of that, but a much higher version of what normally we would get. So it's still a level that's a really pleasurable feeling in terms of what happens inside it. And it doesn't matter who you are. People can play it down and go, I'm too cool for that. Something gets stimulated in you that's outside of your control when you get a like or a follow or whatever it is on social media. So if somebody is gaining popularity on social media and they're getting a lot of likes and a lot of positive attention, they are that's one of the pitfalls of gaining popularity, be it a celebrity or be it on social media. You are getting all of these addictive dopamine hits, and you have to have a come down from that as well when they're not happening, and you go back onto social media looking for them again, because there is, as you named, an addictive element to getting that feeling. When we're getting that feeling, we want it again and again and again, because normal life just doesn't feel the same as getting that feeling,
And does it go the other way, Mark? Like if you begin to lose your following or lose the amount of likes you get, I assume there's the opposite reaction, is there?
There is. So again, it all is just linked into how we socially interact. So if we are being excluded, so social exclusion would be the term. So if we're being socially excluded, very same as you take very relatable if I put it into a group of teenagers or kids in school. If one person's being pushed out, so that person was once the most popular person in the class. The next thing, suddenly they're being pushed out, they will experience like really bad feelings of anxiety and depression and low mood. And they are triggered. That research study I was talking about, they are triggered massively on Instagram, absolutely at a chronic level on Instagram. Because, well, without fail, somebody will stop commenting on your page because they don't want to look like a creep that's always commenting all the time. So they go, geez, I've already commented on 2 of his photos, and I comment again, and I don't think I'm checking obsessed with them or whatever it is.
Yeah.
So out of a normal kind of pattern of not wanting to look like you're fucking obsessed with somebody, you might not comment, and that person then is used to having. So I go, that's 2 times Sean or Kevin or Roland comment on my picture, and now, they didn't even like it, didn't comment this time. And it doesn't matter that 450 other people liked it. I'm looking going, hang on. I'm caught up with the whole thing of, hang on, like, what? Sean didn't like the Roland didn't like my picture, The next thing I'm getting this feeling of, hang on, have I done something wrong? And all these insecurities that are firing up and being going, I thought maybe not as good as last one, was that shit? Is the people who I see having loads of followers in the social or in the photography community now not liking my stuff? These people who hold the higher status or social status, just like in the playground, are they not liking what I did? And next thing I'm kind of going, I'm rattling with insecurities. And then very same way, a hormone gets fired off. So it's a chemical thing. I go back to my original point. It's beyond our logical conscious control. Cortisol gets fired off, which is a stress hormone, which lights up called. So we are laborious with the brain stuff. You want to have a good brain stuff?
Give me it all.
Absolutely.
Everything you have.
So I won't bore you too much with the brain, but we have 2 key elements of the brain that control what's happening with it socially. So I don't know if you know this, there's the amygdala and we've got the prefrontal cortex. So I won't get too technical to lose people. But the prefrontal cortex is that piece that makes us human. It's the social development side. It's where we get all our ability to think and, learn how to behave and things like that. And we and a couple of primates are the only people are the only animals that have the prefrontal cortex. Every other animal has the amygdala. So we share that with all of the animal kingdom. And the amygdala is our primal instinct. So when something goes wrong, you'll all be familiar with this. We get triggered into the term fight or flight, which is basically an elevated level of our nervous system. So we have an automatic nervous system that fires off beyond our control. So when something like that, and it might seem silly, but the reality is when something like that happens and I'm looking on, Jesus, why isn't he commented? My amygdala, my nervous system is getting fired off with a nervous tension and a nervous energy that creates like different levels of heart rate, blood pressure, I might start sweating or whatever. So whatever way it is uniquely happening to you, it happens. And because you go into fight or flight mode, you're no longer in, well, we always categorize it as you're in a traffic light. So you're either a green, amber, or red in terms of where you are. So if I'm in green, I'm in what's called the social engagement zone. So the best way to reference it is like don't take me on happy, on chilled out and relaxed. Everything's nice and I think positive, happy thoughts. But if I get triggered, and people are getting triggered all over the place on social media, if I get triggered into the amber zone, I go into fight or flight, which literally means I am in fight or flight mode. Like, listen to the word. So I'm either in, I need to defend myself, I need to do something else to protect myself, or I need to get the fuck out of here because this is really bad. I need to get out. This is a panic situation. So, and this is not a conscious thing. So people who are listening need to realize this is not something that, like, so this happens to somebody. They're not weak, they're not an idiot, they're not stupid, because this is all automatic. This happens to us all automatically. So if you get triggered like that and you are automatically activated, two things happen when you're activated. You think away and you behave a certain way. So the behavioral way would be elevated levels of blood pressure or heart rate or whatever it is, and the adrenal gland will release adrenaline, which brings its own problems. And you will start thinking in fight or flight mode. So you'll start thinking negative thoughts. Oh my God, something bad's happening. Something's really wrong. So you get all these negative thoughts floating around in your head that cause you absolute pain and suffering. So if you are on social media, and that is not if you are on social media. Sorry, I'm correcting myself before I even say it. When you are on social media, both things are being fired off for you without you realizing it. So you cannot avoid this. It's not possible to avoid it. When you use social media, two things are being fired for you: positive hormones and then a mixture of negative hormones. And it will saturate us if we use it too much. We'll become flooded and overwhelmed by the emotions that are happening to us. And it just creates this chaotic kind of spiral of exhaustion. You know what I mean? If you get exhausted from the too many dopamine hits, you'll get stressed or anxious from too much of the opposite, you know?
So so let's say it's automatic, like you can't control what's happening. So when you're on social media, but what you can control is the usage, I suppose, where you'd start there, would you? If, you know, I mean, limit usage, or is it a case of, is the case of you shouldn't be using social media to compensate if you're in a bad place? Do you know, like, how do you kind of strike that balance? Do you know what I mean?
It's a hard one to answer because everybody's coming at it from a different place. So some people get really positive social engagement out of social media. So personally, I've used it in such a fortunate way. I got to meet great photographers and people, like, you know, I met Mark and all the rest of the full Irish team and got to go and do things. It's great, so that's what there is. And Ronan and Kevin. So like you can see why people do it, but how they protect themselves from it, I suppose, is developing and this is going to sound easier than it actually is, developing your self-awareness so you understand what's going on when you go on to use it. And to develop your self-awareness, you need to have a level of mature thinking that means that you can both praise and critique yourself. So you need to be open to looking at yourself from a critical point of view, not beating yourself up. So that's a very different thing. I'm not saying beat yourself up, but you need to be aware of, you need to have a good level of awareness where you won't go into denial when you're doing something wrong or getting into a bad behavior pattern, but where you look and go, hang on, I'm using this a bit too much, you know. You know, so if you're, I don't know, you can probably all relate to this. I can definitely relate to my wife will laugh. There's times where people are looking at me with my phone, well, you ever put the fucking phone in what you're doing or wherever it is or blah, 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 you know. And instead of me responding in a defensive way and going, I should fuck off, you use your phone as well or whatever it is, I need to actually have the ability to critically reflect and go, yeah, you know what, this is not right what I'm doing, and put it down, you know. But that, I do believe that that's easier said than done. A lot of people are more of the frame of mind of getting into denial or defense point of view where they go, well, don't tell me what to do, you should be on your phone all the time, you know. How would you, they don't judge me, like they'll take it as can you relate to that idea, you know?
Yeah,
absolutely.
They get offended, like, basically, yeah,
they get offended, and it's because, you know, some people are better at, some people are much better at taking on board feedback and criticism and evaluating and looking at themselves than others are. That's, again, not a good thing. It's not a judgment of people, it's just people are at different places. But like, so that's the first thing in terms of having a self-awareness. Definitely balance. You need to not be on it all the time. Some people are on social media all the time. Like, we've got a great little feature on our phone called Screen Time, or, you know, where it shows you how much you've done. So you can use that to critically kind of reflect on yourself and your usage and see is it at a healthy level? Because I mean, if you can take one thing out of what I'm saying here, you're guaranteed to be negatively affected every time you go on social media. So the more time you spend on it, the more time you are allowing yourself to be triggered negatively, as well as positively. So if you look at your screen time, use and it's 6 hours, you probably are going to be experiencing a lot of really bad stimulus when you're on social media. That's probably going to be bleeding into like poor sleep pattern and, you know, insecurity. We were joking in the full Irish group about FOMO, fear of missing out, you know, where you hear what's missing out and what's happening. But that's the real thing about social media.
I get a lot of FOMO, like genuinely I get a lot of FOMO, especially like obviously because, you know, I'm a concert photographer and if there's like, well, obviously back when we had concerts, if there was like a gig that I'd requested to get put down for a press pass and I wasn't successful or whatever, I would spend the night almost torturing myself watching everyone else's clips waiting for their photos, and it's very strange, but I'd literally be sitting there waiting to see them just so I could go like, the bastards, you know what I mean? Like, I'd be like, but I'd also be like, oh man, like I'm delighted for them because, like, you know, obviously I get on really well with the whole concert scene in Ireland's fairly small, so I know everyone, and I'm like, you know, delighted for them or whatever. But there is part of me that's like, ugh.
But sure, like I told Kevin that I have like notifications turned off for Instagram, and he died. Like he's like, what? Like you would like, are you not afraid of missing out? Like, you know, he couldn't get over it. Like, but,
that blew my mind. I was like, but like, what if you get like a message of someone? It was a panic moment for me.
that's again a perfect example of what if I get a message? I have to reciprocate. I have to socially respond. You know, I have to message somebody back. Yeah. It's funny, I turn off all the notifications of social media off my phone as well, and I did it because of that piece I'm telling you, the self-awareness. I noticed I was looking at them constantly, you know, the phone would flash, and next thing I noticed I was looking at my phone when there wasn't even a flash, you know, you're kind of looking to see what had happened, you know, so the next thing I was looking at, oh my God, if I'm looking at my phone, there's not even a flash, there's something seriously wrong there, you know what I mean? You know, if I'm looking for a notification, and the notification, if I bring back to psychology, is a trick the companies, these private companies want to make money off you. So, like, watch The Social Dilemma that's on Netflix, you know.
I haven't watched it yet, but I've heard a lot about it.
Get on it. It'll give you kind of what I'm saying in a very enjoyable kind of visual way. So they are experts at getting you back onto their platform, because the more you're on their platform, the more money they're making, because they can then charge advertising companies for engagement. So they are sending you a notification purposely to get you back on. So typically speaking, if you post a picture and you get 50 notifications, they will know who you engage with the most. So I don't know, Kevin, say you typically like Ronan's pictures the most or spend more time on Ronan. Your notification will say Ronan HD Photography and 49 others have posted a photo or have a picture, you know, because they know that that's a hook for you. You go, fuck Ronan. Oh, Ronan. The next thing you're gone back into your phone, you know, because somebody that they know is stimulating.
Jesus.
So that's purposely being done. They watch your behavior and they will notify you with things that will hook you back in. So if you have your notifications on, you are getting, if I bring it to psychology, I don't know if anybody ever heard of the theory of, this is a common thing you might hear in movies, but have you ever heard Pavlov's dogs? Anybody ever heard of that idea? No?
Yeah.
No, I've never heard of
it. It salivates at the noise. It's trained in. Yeah, I know. We're in college. Explain it there. Explain it anyway. It's a very interesting theory.
Yeah, so for anyone that's listening, or for those who are here that don't know it, so I guess a psychologist or psychiatrist, his name is Irvin Pavlov, I think his name was, he wanted to do a behavioural study on what stimulates us, so how we're conditioned. So he came up with the theory of the classic conditioning. So he did the study on animals, he did the study on dogs. So he wanted to produce a stimulus, and don't bear in mind I'm telling you we're all animals that get stimulated, that would get the dog to salivate for food without the food being there. So basically any dog will salivate for food, because if you put food in the dog will start frothing at the mouth and there's no food there on to eat. So what he did is he started feeding the dogs and ringing a bell at the same time. So he'd ring a bell before he fed the dog. So the dog started to associate the ringing of the bell with getting fed. So he didn't need to have food then. He could just ring a bell and the dog would start salivating. So
no way.
They're salivating. It's just the noise of a bell ringing. So you then take that.
I have accidentally done that to my daughter. You know, at the start.
Jesus Christ.
You know, the start of an episode where we have the two camera clicks.
Yeah.
Whenever she hears that, she goes, "Welcome to the tripod."
I thought you had a bell ready for breakfast time or something.
Yeah, so nice.
There's that as well. We won't get into that here now.
I thought you were tricking the poor girl.
Cheers!
It's like
I am a good father. I swear, I am a good father.
You are a great father, Ronan.
Absolutely. So if we can forget Ronan kind of parenting skills for a second, you can relate what I'm saying to the ping of your phone for a message. So my phone pings, dopamine gets fired. I start salivating in that way in terms of going, something positive happening, you know. It could be just second Sky News and I'm automatically getting triggered thinking that it's another like on Instagram or whatever it is, do you know what I mean? It could be the battery percentage is dying or whatever. The phone just flashes in the corner of my eye, I get a little bit of a hit, you know. And
then if it's not what you're expecting, would you get like a cortisol? That's what it's called, isn't it? Cortisol. Like, could that actually creep in? Like,
yeah, it could, and it all depends, as I said, based on you and where you're coming from when you're using it. Now, you will get some sort of a disappointing response if you are started going down that pattern of being.
Yeah.
I think it's kind of going back to Sean's original point of saying he found that he was getting caught up with likes and follows and things like that. So if you are already in that pattern and you're noticing that behaving yourself, yeah, you will get a negative reaction when you see it's not an actual Instagram like, you know. But there's we again we're talking about this recently. Like, it's just worth saying. I don't know why it feels worth saying. I can follow you, fuck off. You know.
Absolutely.
100%.
And they do, like, don't get me wrong, it's nice to know that, because and especially coming from a photography point of view, we're trying to express our creativity and something we're proud of that we made, and there's a skill set to it. So it's very nice to see that people like it, but like, I mean, some of the best photographers don't have many followers. We were talking about this guy, Michael McGillicuddy and Paul O'Brien. They're fucking savage.
What a legend.
Yeah, like, I mean, they are definitely, like, don't get me wrong, like, you're all great, and there's loads of great photographers. Jesus, they are class. They are class actors, you know?
Big time.
And they don't have much of a following, like, you know? So, I mean, the followers mean nothing other than somebody has either got really lucky, they're actually really talented, or they put a hell of a lot of effort into following and unfollowing people and liking and commenting on their page to build their following, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Or they've got some sort of a company or an app or a business brand helping drive it either there in the background too. So,
yeah.
Look, I just think it's worth naming that, like, likes and follows are such a poor indicator to whether you're doing well or not, is what I would say, you know?
I think, like, for me, I have, like, there's a base of my followers. I say followers and my followers. I even think saying that as a term is very weird.
Yeah.
But like, there's a base of people who I'd interact with and they'd interact with me that I get, like, let's say 90% of my pleasurable experience on social media out of maybe 40 people, you know? And it's the same people kind of over and over again. And for me, I'd rather just have, like, if it was just those rather than all of my followers, if it came to a choice or whatever, I'd go with those, like, all day long, because, you know, they're just people that I genuinely enjoy interacting with, and, you know, it's they're probably the people who engage back with you properly. Like, some people of the, like, I don't know how many followers you have. If you've got 5,000, 2,000, 3,000 followers, whatever it is, probably only a couple of hundred of them like your photo. Yeah, absolutely.
You know?
That's the honest truth.
You know, what value are the others other than a number that you can get your ego boosted by, you know, a number on a second screen that can easily be gone as quickly. Like, it's just not the healthiest place to be if you're placing your value on that, you know. For me, it's not, you know. And
that's actually after bringing up an interesting point, because I got a couple of messages about the podcast on Tuesday, and one person, they didn't want to comment on the post on Instagram. They just wanted to stay anonymous, but they chose just to message me privately. And I just have the message up here on my phone, and they said that with regards to social media, I have a thought about the motivation and unmotivation to likes. For someone starting out or even a bit into photography, a poorly liked post or photo could put them off, demoralise them and stop them shooting, when it could be that the post got missed or other factor or at play. The other side of this is that likes can possibly tell someone they're getting things right or finding their style. Just a thought.
Yeah.
I thought that was interesting. I thought that was interesting, and I agreed with them. I said, yes, possibly is an indicator that you're doing things right. I said, but however, in my experience, it's if someone is using those likes for the validation, so that's where it becomes kind of a bit slippery, like, you know. Mark, you can probably give a better insight into that, but that was kind of my interpretation of it.
I think it's a really good kind of analysis or observation of what can go on, because I do definitely think if you're starting off, like we join, I always kind of relate in this way, like, especially with my main interaction with photography, it's like a camera club. You know, you're going there to present your stuff to a camera club and seeing how they receive it, you know, and that's probably the benefits of being in the photography community on Instagram, not being obsessed with kind of putting half naked pictures of myself or whatever it is up there, you know. So that's
you found my second account.
Trust me, if Kevin could.
What does the HD stand for on that account?
Oh, oh God. Yeah.
He always finds a way to lower the
tone. We're doing well, lads. We lasted quite a while before we lowered the tone for this one.
But we are lucky in the sense of when we use it, we are getting a lot of, I would think, positive interaction. Like, I mean, and again, this is worthwhile going to go a little bit of a rabbit hole down on it. Because I don't want to come across like I'm making social media to be totally negative. It's absolutely not. And I can speak to that from a personal point of view. I personally think that I developed massively as a photographer in the last year from using Instagram, and only because of Instagram. And that's not to say that there's some magical power in Instagram. It is the connections I made. And like, thank you personally, Sean. You gave me a lot of help behind the scenes as well. Like, you'd share videos and tips and things like that with me. And Mark O'Brien is fantastic at sharing stuff with me too. So like, that point is really relevant. And if you're starting out and you get no response and you're trying to jump into a community, like, you can see why somebody would get knocked or kind of be set back. And then the very opposite happens, obviously. If you're getting kind of positive feedback, yeah, you're naturally going to think you're doing something right. You're going to think you're doing something really well. So
yeah.
I do think that person's kind of hitting the nail kind of pretty well on the head, if I kind of heard you right from what you said, you know.
Yeah, 100%. But it's just probably about striking that balance, like, isn't it? So what we talk.
Well, it is, because again, I'm speaking from my own point of view, so I'd like to think I'm a pretty well person in the head. So I'm kind of coming onto it from a probably secure enough base so that I'm not chasing it for reasons that are going to cause me too much pain. That being said, I'm not sitting here saying I'm immune to this. I absolutely have noticed times, as I said, where I'm on my phone, and like, the worst of all is if one of your children says, I don't know if any of you can relate to one of your kids saying, "Oh, you're on the phone." That's like absolute horrendous. You should feel like a fucking failure if that happens. You know, you're like, oh,
yeah, it's happened, and it's like sugar.
Yeah, 100%, and that's you getting kind of caught up in the model. And again, that's you. Watch that documentary, because that's a great way of looking at that social dilemma. I'm not being paid by Netflix. Just, it'll really help you on the back of what we're talking about, because building on what you said, Sean, that comment from that person, if you bear in mind the algorithms and the meaning behind Instagram in terms of the business model, they are trying to get you to engage more. So I don't know if you can relate to this. So I noticed this, that if I put up a photo and it's kind of booming in terms of, I can see a high pace of likes, Instagram shuts down the engagement on me. So the engagement stops happening in terms of typically when a photo starts booming. The more popular a photo starts off, I find the engagement lowers. Instagram are doing that to get me to pay money to put it back out there. That's absolutely 100% happening. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? There's absolutely 100% no doubt about that. The photo, like, I just want to put up a photo like a Dunquin or something. Lovely sunset, look like a lovely photo. Boom, 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 like, comment, next thing, stalled. The engagement, like, was really low. I know the figures were really low. And I was looking going, that is absolutely no doubt about it. They are aware of possible triggers that I'm getting. So they are well able to tap into social psychology enough. He's getting a hit off this. Let's shut it down. Let's drop in a little logo and let's promote this post. And if he wants that hit back, he's going to need to promote that.
Scoundrels, aren't they?
Spend some money and get that post back out there and start getting that hit again. So he's going to start paying for his cocaine.
That
is but they're like that heroin.
That is wild.
But they're like that heroin dealer that just gives you a little taste, and then it's like, you want more, you got to pay for it. You know what I mean? Like, that's.
How do you know that, Kevin?
I watch it in movies.
100.
Yeah.
Well, you know who was funny? Because I was listening. I hope he doesn't mind me talking about him. I've seen Mark Duffy's stories where he was speaking about the drop of engagement, and he got massive likings and the blue tick and all that stuff. So
yeah,
I reckon he's a massive target for the Instagram algorithm to shut him down when he pays money to do stuff. You know, because
he was saying he went from high thousands of story views to like less than 1,000.
Yeah,
you know,
and that's exactly what I'm saying. So they are. So if you get that, and bear in mind, well, I'm kind of guessing from what he said, he's using this very much as a business idea. He's not like me who's just using it as a hobby. He needs that engagement. That's where he drives his income from. You know what I mean? So if they shut that down, they're tactically shutting down the social conditioning part of it that wants to get the hit. They're also shutting down his livelihood. So he needs to start spending money to get his likes back up and his engagement back up so he can effectively make money. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
which is sad because he needs to actually start spending money to then make money. That's
such a good point.
It just shows how much control they have.
Yeah, literally. If you think about, like, that didn't even cross my mind. Like, we're doing it as a hobby. I mean, and it's regardless of whether we get high engagement, low engagement, it makes no difference to my salary at the end of the year. But for people who rely on social media to bring in their income and for their marketing, it's fairly detrimental when the algorithm does that. Like, you know what I mean? Like a recession. Like,
it's not only detrimental, and this is the thing everybody needs to remember: it's done on purpose. So, like, they're an entity. Yeah. They're an entity that has studied this and is doing this purposely to us. They don't care about us, when we're honest. They don't care what you're doing. You're just a user. I go back to that word. You are a user that they need to make more money off. You know.
And Mark, what are your thoughts on, you know, obviously they removed the number of likes being visible to everyone else. So like,
I think that was a PR move to look like they were doing something that did absolutely sweet as all, you know, because they haven't made a blind bit of a difference. You can
still check the likes.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, people still, and more importantly, people are seeing it themselves, and it's all about the person themselves getting the hit. You know, they haven't stopped the person themselves seeing it. The person themselves is still seeing it, and that's the person who's getting hooked by it. You know, at the end of the day, if I go on and I see I have 1,000 likes, I don't give a shit whether you have it. I just got a hit from seeing I got 1,000 likes.
Yeah. Well, I've actually, I can hand on heart say I definitely check less how many likes a photo has. I go my own. Like I just kind of post it, and you know, comments are always welcome. Like, God, that's cool. And I very rarely would actually check now how many likes a photo has gotten. I think that's quite positive in that respect. Maybe just for me, I just don't. And now that they've changed it again, I don't even have to check where the likes are anymore anyway. So don't get me started on that. But
and that's not a bad thing. I think you're not checking because it's probably a healthier place to be. But I do think, I don't know where this comes to my head. I observe them from, again, I think it's just because of what I do, the point of view. I'm always fascinated to see what people like, not to be liked. I'm fascinated to see what people like. So I'm always intrigued. I put up a picture that I think is absolutely fucking amazing because I was there in the moment, and I remember seeing that thing, and I look and it goes deadly, and I put it up and it only gets, I don't know however many likes, and I go, what do I do like that? You know, I'm more curious, and then I put up a second picture of the sunset that Clifton Moore has got 20,000 likes, and I go, Jesus, come on, like, seriously. You know? That wasn't a dig, Sean. That wasn't a dig.
A subtle dig.
A blatant dig is what that was. It's okay though. I'm quite black and white. I'm quite a blunt person, so I appreciate that.
but you know what I mean? And I do wonder, like, you were in the group with me, Sean, so you've heard me saying, I kind of at the stage now where I'm trying to use my camera to tag where I go. So I love when I'm on the mountain, I take a picture of somebody hiking or whatever it is, because that's what I like. I like seeing that, and I throw it up. But that, again, because I feel I'm coming at it from a secure enough base in what I'm doing. Somebody who maybe isn't will look and go, I think it'll absolutely change or mold their creativity in the wrong way, in the sense that they'll go, shit, I must only go to the Clifton Moore, I must only go to all the stereotypical spots, you know, I must go to I must go to whatever it is, you know, I have to only go to these places, the sunset and sunrise, that's how I will be a good photographer, you know.
Well, there's a prime example of that in Dublin. Like I specifically sought out going to Anne's Lane on a day after it was raining because I knew there'd be a puddle and I knew I'd get a puddle umbrella reflection shot that like hundreds of people have done, you know, before and after me. But I knew full well that when I went there, like I post that shot and I knew I'd get like a bucket load of likes and comments on it. And like I literally, like I live in North Wicklow, so like it's not far, but it's not close. And I literally went there just for the pure sake of getting loads of likes and comments on social media. Like
I'm learning a lot about you today, Kev.
Yeah, but this was 3.5, 4 years ago. Like, when I was starting out, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
it's a great example, and again, it comes down to your motive and why you're doing it. So, I mean, if I want to sell my product, it makes logical business sense that I go out and rope in the followers by doing stuff like that. That's a different thing from me gaining my pleasure and my sense of creativity from that, because I have a very specific purpose of why I'm doing it. I'm not going to do it and I'm not going to get lost in it. So I'm actually okay in what I'm doing because I'm doing it with a very tactical head on my shoulders. But if I'm only going out and shooting them shots, I'm craving likes and I'm not even making money off it. I'm just getting a hit, and I'm getting this really false sense of social engagement or positive social interaction. I'm going to end up crashing the other side and ending up anxious and depressed and low, and it's not happening. You know, that's the reality of it, because it's not going to last. You know. It's not going to work forever.
Absolutely.
You know? Yeah. Which is why you get people depressed. Like that study I was talking about why Instagram is the worst was like the key things is anxiety and depression are massive side effects of using Instagram. They are absolutely like that. Chronically, with research is out there. Like that is one of the side effects of using Instagram is anxiety and depression. You know. Like and we probably cannot relate to it in some small little level. Sorry, Sean.
No, you're right. Sure. Like the way I almost feel, because I'm talking to an expert here, but the way I kind of put it during the podcast was like, it's like doing something for intrinsic versus extrinsic values. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, or intrinsic or extrinsic motivation. Like, if you do something for an intrinsic means, like you're going to get a more fulfilling, long-lasting feeling of happiness, like as opposed to doing something for a reward or something materialistic where you'll get that initial hit and then it'll just wear off. I think I used the analogy of like it's like building a house on sticks as opposed to
give me an analogy, Sean. Give me new ones. Give me more.
One's gonna last, one's not gonna. So that's kind of what I kind of like equated to, like as you say there when you mentioned just crashing on the other side, you know.
But you, like, again, it comes back to, and you're right, what you're hitting on the head. We in like psychology or counseling fields talk about people having either an external source of evaluating themselves or an internal source of evaluating themselves. So typically when we go past adolescence, we're meant to drop the external way of evaluating ourselves and internalize our way of evaluating ourselves. We're meant to drop that feeling of needing to fit in too much and placing how we see ourselves based on others. Social media stokes up that external source of evaluation again, which causes a massive problem. You can't please everybody. You can't. Yeah. That's why I walk in the room with 20 people. Few people in there are going to hate the fucking sight of me, you know, and I can't make them all happy, you know what I mean?
I doubt that very much, man.
Yeah, there's nothing you can do, and as long as I walk in and I'm placing my sense of value, and same goes when I'm going onto the social media platforms, and I'm placing my sense of value on me and what I see is right, or those closest to me, like my family, so I place my value on their feelings and how I interact with them. I'm going to be pretty well armoured to deal with crap that comes on social media. If I'm going on to social media and I am craving them to tell me how good I am in trouble. You know?
Is there ways to build up those coping mechanisms? Like I'm a school teacher, and like they've brought in well-being now into schools, and they would be doing it in kind of guidance modules and SPHE, etc. Like for young people, is there ways that they can build up those coping mechanisms? Like, because you would worry about the mental health of young people, like especially teens, like, you know, with all this going on.
There is. You'd be looking at trying to develop some sort of positive sense of self-identity in the book. Like, it's such a hard one to answer because you don't know the personal circumstances of why a person is craving that. Like, you don't know what's happening at home, who has rattled their sense of self and how they view themselves. It kind of like it's like a positive reinforcement model to those people, you know, not kind of blowing smoke at them, but like focusing in on their strengths and their positives and helping them build them and helping them learn more about what they want to do, getting them to do bits of reflection on themselves and starting to develop the self-awareness we talked about earlier about what it is you want to do, what are your interests, what do you like doing, will help them learn more about themselves and start to focus inward rather than thinking, well, I should be smoking when this person's smoking, or I should be saying this because that person's saying that. Do you know what I mean? They're learning more about themselves and getting to know themselves better. And like that sounds really simple, but some people will be used to just hearing you're fucking useless, you're shit, that's the voice they have in their head, and you could well be the first person to tell them opposite especially you as a role in teacher.
This is what I'm saying. Yeah, that's actually so interesting because like I see it every day in school. Like if there's kids who misbehave or if there's kids who are struggling, like often there's a reason a student is misbehaving. And it's because they might be getting those negative inputs and they might not have found, like school is probably a place where hopefully, like nowadays, I think teachers are quite good at it. But back maybe a couple of years ago, teachers would have put down students possibly, I don't know. But you don't know what negative inputs those students are constantly getting. And that could be causing their self-esteem to be low. And then they act out as a result of that,
And again, imagine somebody with that way of being that was never resolved and they now are at the cesspit that is social media and all the potential pitfalls in that. They are
this is it.
They're so vulnerable to things. And that's teenagers and social media, teenagers and Instagram is an absolute a disaster. The things that go on in that are absolutely huge. But look,
because they don't have the mental maturity yet, is it?
Absolutely, and because they're already, and there's again, if you go into psychology, there's stages of development we all have to go through. So we develop, or we go through these different psychosocial crises, they're called. So we have to navigate them as we go through life. It is without fail part of adolescence that you to navigate the balance of social pressure and fitting in with developing your own sense of identity.
Yeah.
So you are naturally at that age in a weakened state from that point of view. Remember I was saying with the armour I have, because I kind of feel like I have a good sense of self. They naturally don't have that because it's not at that stage of our development as human beings. You know what I mean? So they're already going on to it with a feeling of wanting to fit in and being under pressure from societal kind of ways of being and interactions, So they're at a disadvantage using social media than the well-adjusted adult, or hopefully well-adjusted adult, is what I would say.
I'm just very glad that, like, back in my day, Bebo was the extent of social media, and probably my biggest concern was anyone going to give me their love for the day? You know what I mean? And what was going to be on my flashbox? Whereas, like, when you think about it now, so I would have been probably 16, 17 or 18 maybe on an older teenager, let's say, on Bebo, and that was the extent of social media. There was no, how many friends do you have? How many likes? How many comments? It was just like, here's a load of colourful stuff, and it was a bit of crack. You know what I mean? Whereas I can tell now, even because I do have the odd teenager message me saying like, "Oh, can you share this? Can you give me a shout out? Can you do this and that?" And as I said in the last podcast, like, for what reason? And that is worrying. Now, on the flip side of that, there's actually quite a few really, really clued in teenagers on social media as well. Like, Liam Murphy, lads, that's part of the community. Yeah. Liam's still in school. Like, Liam is a teenager, and he is like, he's and he's just, he's proper mature head on him, thank God.
Very mature.
I know he's going to be listening to this, so Liam, just keep being you, bud.
Keep doing what you're doing. Fair play.
Eat your vegetables. Good lad.
But there's, what you're talking about there. Sorry, I'm going to go down the rabbit hole now if I'm allowed. When you're talking about Bebo and it was just the love, social media companies have learned how to tap into our behaviour more and have added features and functions. They've evolved too. Not just us and more people on it. They have got better at bringing us and sucking us in, and this. Yeah. Like, it's lovely what you said in terms of it wasn't about likes and follows, and it's making me think of a point that I'd like to say for anyone who's listening to it about the follows. If you look at somebody with kind of, desire or whatever it is that you want to have, what they have in terms of the following or the engagement or whatever it is, I get that, I understand that. That you nearly can't help that, because that go back to the old tribes. Whoever had the most status had the most second women, they have the most opportunity to gather resources or be given resources. They're the best fed. So, and you see that playing out on social media. The person with the most followers is being given camera gear for free, and next thing they're being paid by Tourism Ireland to travel around the place.
Yes, Mark. Yes.
He's dumbfounded. Look, he can't even respond.
How did you hear about the free camera gear? That's what I want to know.
That just came out of nowhere.
I joke, but I'm definitely as well. So they will, and looks great, obviously, but like that's the reality. You see somebody doing that, and you kind of go, "Oh, why haven't they contacted me? What's wrong with me? Why can't I do that?" You know what I mean? And you look and think, "Jesus, I'd love to be in the same position as him, because if I'm in that position, I'll get the same opportunities, and I would be given a higher social status within the community where I get opportunities." I was listening. I don't know which podcast I was listening to, Kevin, and actually I kind of logged as a note in my head. You were speaking about losing a lens cap, and you went into cons and they gave you a lens cap for free.
Yeah.
Do you think they give everybody that walks in off the street a lens cap for free?
I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe.
Get one of them on. I bet you my life.
Yeah,
they don't.
probably not. No, I can't. Yeah, probably not.
And they don't. And it's a lovely gesture, but that's a natural thing. People who kind of are around more or know more will get different things. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's happening all around to us. You know. So other people who see this are kind of going, Jesus, if I get loads of followers, if I get loads of this, that, and the other, I'll start getting all that. The next thing they want to chase it. And what they don't realise, and this is the point I want to make, is with a big following comes a lot of downside and negative side. So you can end up getting snookered in terms of, well, hang on, I want to branch out to a different arm, and I can't do that because I built a whole following around this. Or you get targeted by all the jealous people on Instagram and all the bullies and things like that are out there who want to make all these indirect attacks and stuff like that on you, or they want to directly attack you and do things like that. And then you are getting fired off. It doesn't matter. And people think for some reason, I don't know, again, sorry for doing it, but he's the only person I can think of. Take Mark Duffy, who's, I don't know, everybody's got a blue tick. But just because you have a blue tick and you have so many followers, you're indestructible. You are not going to get hurt by all these comments. I can't speak on behalf of him, I can speak in general. People will still get hurt or whatever it is by people attacking them, you know?
Absolutely.
And the more out there they are and the more followers. So just bear that in mind when you're chasing your following. It's not as sweet as it looks, is what I would say, you know?
Mark, this is almost rehearsed because this has just led perfectly into another message that I received today that I wanted to bring up in the podcast. And if you allow me, I will just read it up here now. And it's actually really interesting because they said, "How are you, Sean? Just listen to Minipod. Very insightful. And I really appreciate all the help you guys are providing." So can I ask a question? I'm currently at 4,300 followers, and for me, the gaining followers is almost like a way to open more doors. It's always about the end goal of taking the photography to the next level. Is it possible that being on the number of followers you can actually take the foot off the pedal in terms of not needing to focus on the follower count as you've kind of leveled up, so to speak? Just wondering what your thoughts are on this, because you're definitely right about striking the balance. So that's kind of what you were talking about in terms of opening up doors. They were asking, does the number of followers lead to, I suppose, more opportunities, and he referred to like leveling up. Like,
see, the thing might be is like they might not even be good doors. I'm sure you'll delve into this further, Mark, but you know what I mean? Yeah. Like doors may be there and more doors may open, but they may not be good doors. That's something.
They might be doors that snooker you and put you into a kind of a corner, into a hole that you can't get out of, in the sense that you're stuck with one brand or one kind of, I don't know, something that morally doesn't fit with you. You're being asked to do. And that might be just at a minor level in terms of, I just don't really like this product. The next thing you're kind of feeling devalued because you're kind of, you priority. And that's like one of the main reasons, and it's just me from a personal point of view. It's why I won't sell my photos at the moment. Just money devalues things for me. It kind of, which is a bizarre statement to make, money devalues. You know,
I get it. I get it.
It's a moral devalue.
It takes away from your feeling and of the art. Yeah, I get that.
And you're not speaking about a financial devaluing, like you're speaking about, like, morally.
No, absolutely. And then you'd wonder, like, you see people like, I don't know, people think this idea of, well, if you're getting given products and you're selling products or whatever it is, you're better off. Again, I think it just all ties back into that whole idea of how we kind of survived and took positions of power in communities. It was the higher the status you have, the more you get off. And we have this, And nobody realizes the person who's leading the tribe, you go back to, bear in mind, this is all evolutionary, as I said, it's all brain chemistry that we can't control. The person who ran the tribe had serious pressure on their shoulders. You know what I mean? Something went wrong. They were stressed. You speak to managers of companies and things like that. Yeah, they get to go home and they get to dodge off and they get to do whatever they want to do when you don't get that privilege and they get paid more. They're also stressed a bit and working out of hours and doing all these extra things that people don't see. So it's
very true.
You know, it's not like, I mean, you go back to your person asking about the followers, is there a balance point of view? If you want to do a real counselor thing and say, look inward there, if you're asking that question, there's probably something telling you already that there's a balance to be to strike, you know. You're not asking that question for no reason is what I would say. You know, there's something stern in you when you were even, if your mind is even going that way, some flag is going up in your head and you need to look at what that's saying about you is what I would think, you know.
That's mad. That's so interesting. Mark, like I've actually been enthralled in this conversation. Like, I find psychology so like fascinating. We would have touched on it in college on modules, just like that's where I would have heard like about Pavlov's dog and stuff like that, like, you know. But before we finish up, we want to finish on positive notes, because not that this has been negative, it's been really, really enthralling.
This has been one of my favourite, if not my favourite episode so far.
I'm going to say, I know it has been my favourite episode.
Genuinely, like this has just been
so interesting, like
amazing,
mind blowing. I just like, so we're definitely going for a pint anyway, 100%. I just a chat
and a hug,
and a hug,
a real hug, not a fake oxytocin.
Exactly.
A good manly hug, but. You spoke about the positive aspects of social media already, and like in terms of like getting involved in the community, meeting photographers and meeting friends. That's what I would have always said as well. Like probably one of my best friend, Mark O'Brien, like an absolute gentleman. Like I wouldn't have known him if I didn't go on Instagram. Do you know what I mean? So this is where it comes into the positives. Like you do meet friends for life and great people who can help you out in every aspect, like not just photography, you know.
And here to that, because and I have to echo it from Mark O'Brien. I know he gets talked about a bit, but by geez, he's a gentleman, you know.
He is.
As a result of Instagram, I managed to go to Dingle and be chauffeur driven around the whole peninsula, being shown all of the hotspots. Never feeling like I was putting him out, and having the most enjoyable conversation while I was out there, being kind of given little tips and tricks while I was out. I wouldn't have got that without Instagram. You know? I was up the north with Jack Downey. He spent the whole day walking me up and down Tollymore Forest Park, showing me around. Sound as an absolute pound. Chris has hiked me up Cleve Donard, you know. Chris is the Dark Pixel. He's an absolute legend as well. He's a gentleman. He's shown, like, I mean,
this is it.
They're fabulous. They're fabulous positives that can come from social media. And again, I'm not trying to say social media is bad. I'm just saying that there are things that we can fall prey to on it. And as I said, I personally developed skill. Like I've done a diploma in photography. I learn more from you guys in the full Irish than I have from doing a diploma in photography. You know, that's the reality of it, you know. And I can learn from the community, so it has a positive realization, isn't it?
Just to put it back on you now, Mark, you can bring a horse to water, but like you can't make him drink. So I mean, we gave you a couple of tips, but man, you grabbed the bull by the horns and you went for it. Like I think you're a better exposure blend than I am now. I think I taught you too well.
I'd actually agree with that one.
I would take that. Feed me that dopamine.
I was just going to ask, was that dopamine or oxytocin?
Yeah, look, he's flying high now. But look, Mark, before we finish up, can you tell everyone where they'll be able to find you on social media? Here we go.
Oh no, hang on.
Follow me.
Hang on. Is the quick fire round? Is the quick fire round even really?
Quick fire came on.
Right. We're going to do the quick fire round.
We're going to do the quick fire round. Mark,
we've only 40 minutes left here, lads. So just do the quick fire round there, nice and quick. Yeah.
Okay. Right,
I'm
Mark,
trying to refrain from.
Yeah, Sean, chill your beans. You can mute yourself for this section. Okay, Mark. Quick fire round. Question number 1: what camera accessory can you not leave home without?
An SD card? Oh, no, that wasn't a dig at Ronan.
I knew this episode was about me. As soon as I saw Mark lined up, and we're not going to be talking about his photography, I was like, we're talking about me, aren't we?
I would say accessory filters. Can't leave it on my polarizer.
Okay, lovely. I don't think we've had polarizer yet either, have we? That's always good.
No, great answer.
If you were to use one lens for the rest of your life, what would it be?
24-70, 2.8, Mark II, Canon.
Lovely.
Oh,
You round it.
Apart from the C words, of course. Yeah.
he was going so well. Oh, he was going so well. Scrap the episode. Bye bye. Ball bust. Game over.
I think
agreed.
I'll just
24-70 would be my. It's the best lens for landscape. Yeah, 100%.
I'll answer question 3 for you. RAW or JPEG? Mark's answer is RAW. Okay.
Yeah, you need to delete that question.
I know, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, it is.
Okay. Favorite camera brand?
Canon, and tying into what we've been talking about following that. I've never tried anything else about the popularity and brand, you know?
Yep. Look, that's like me and Nikon. Like, I got a Nikon, I was stuck with Nikon, and it's just because look, it's quick fire, sorry. Clarity, yes or no?
Clarity depends, and if it is you, I'd say the teeniest little amount of it is what I would say to you know.
Everyone gives that answer. Don't go mad on it. You know? Lucy Foster's analogy of clarity was the best thing ever. It's like, what would she say? It's like a photo on steroids.
On steroids,
yeah. It's just
all the way back on episode 1.
Yeah.
Good way of saying it, yeah.
It was a simpler time. And this is a newer question that was added. Who is your favorite photographer?
Ooh, that's a tough question. Who's my favorite photographer?
Sean, you're very close to the screen there. It's spooking me a little bit.
I'm going to say, for his all-around skills and personality, Mark O'Brien.
Come on, Marco.
Yeah.
Well deserved.
Yeah. I'd say for his all-rounders.
This episode should turn into just this podcast.
That's a lovely
Mark O'Brien love-in.
That's a lovely photo, Ronan. I worked out that composition myself.
Hang on, what's it say down the bottom? You can't see it.
Can't see. What does it say? Hashtag give me the dopamine.
He tagged me, guys. Mark tagged me. So
Mark did.
It was me. So sorry about
Mark.
You have to. Well, that's one thing we need to say. You have to give props to somebody if you're going around and taking their photo after them. You know.
Yes, that is true. Well said.
Yeah, I agree.
We've had that debate before. Yeah, it's like giving someone credit for a composition or a shot. Yeah, 100%.
I hear Canon are always doing that, and they also bought all their followers. Just
Mark, while you're there, do you think people genuinely buy followers? I mean, is that a thing?
Oh yeah. Do you not think the sponsorships going on all around the place? No,
yeah, the sponsored posts on the feeds. Yeah,
that's absolutely for followers. That's
really?
No doubt about it. Yeah, 100%. That's 100% for followers. When you see that happening, and again, like when I say that, I don't mean that's coming across as a negative. If you're doing it for business purpose, that makes a lot of sense. You know?
Yeah.
You know, if you're a hobbyist and you're paying for followers, you really need to check yourself.
Reevaluate yourself.
You're very true. Like, you're very, very true and very right in what you say there. Because if it is a hobby and it's just something that you started doing for enjoyment, yet you're now spending money on something that isn't actually going to further you and benefit you, is insanity, isn't it? Like. Because it's an expensive hobby as it is. Let's call a spade here. It's probably one of the most expensive hobbies that there is out there. And then to add,
yeah, sorry to Canon, but that's probably the only reason I'm still on Canon. You know,
can't afford to switch.
It's true though. You know what I mean? Like, but to add an extra, cost onto your hobby is madness. It's absolute madness.
Yeah, would you wonder what the motives are there?
Yeah,
Mark, this has been such an insightful chat. Thank you so much for coming on. We're definitely want to get you back on again, and we'll just chat again. And I honestly could stay here all night, 100%. It was just so interesting, man. Your knowledge and just the way you could relate, everything you said was so relatable and easy to understand, even though you were talking about human psychology. So props for that, and I can't wait for the listeners to hear this, man. So
I just can't wait till he comes back on to like break down our reaction.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. Like his analysis on all of us. Like,
yeah. By the way, I'm blocking you on social media as well. I don't want you to see what I'm doing. I think
I'm going to go the opposite, and I'll just be ranking your head from now on, Mark. I'll be like, Mark, what do you think of this?
Reciprocating the shit.
Did I do this wrong?
James checking me out. I'll start charging you. Well, here, I have to tell you something and give you all a bit of dopamine, a genuine one.
Oh, yes.
You're doing a good job with the podcast, lads. I have to say, fair play.
Thank
you very much, Mark.
You're my second favourite podcast now, so well done.
The honesty. Kevin is just disgusting.
What's your favourite podcast, Mark?
You're never
Canon Weekly or something.
That's all right. Like Blind Boy is my favourite podcast.
Yeah, you're never going to knock Joe Rogan until you start.
Yeah.
I'll knock Joe Rogan out.
I have issues with Joe Rogan's podcast. I don't have the attention span to listen to a Joe Rogan podcast.
You have to listen to it in a couple of days.
They're quite long, aren't they? Like,
they're 3 hours long. Yeah, he's one with Edward Snowden. The most recent one. Brilliant.
Yeah, you're missing out. He's good stuff.
Yeah.
But they're number 2. You're number 2 out of
That's
that.
okay.
Yeah, I'll take that. Like, I'm number 1 in Ireland then, yeah. So like they even.
Number 1 in Ireland, absolutely. Yeah. But honestly, I know, all joking aside, really good. I have to give you really good props for that. And the banter and all that, it's really, really entertaining business. So well done, you're doing a great job. And I'd say I can speak on behalf of a lot of the photography community when I say that.
Legend, man. Thank you very much for that.
That was lovely. Thanks, bud.
Yeah. Brilliant note to end on. Mark, thank you very much. And look, we'll speak to you again soon. But cheers.
Really appreciate it, Mark.
Cheers for coming on, Mark. Great chat. Cheers.
And there you have it, folks. Another episode of The Tripod.
If you did enjoy the podcast, please consider leaving us a review on iTunes.
And you can always subscribe to the podcast. And if you want to listen to more episodes, head over to www.tripod.ie, where you can find us on our socials, which include Facebook, Instagram, Twitter.
Okay, Ronan, that's enough.
Be on Snapchat and TikTok. And okay, thanks.